The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the island of Sodor. Percy and the Funfair. It was a beautiful morning on the island of Sodor. All the engines were very excited. It was the day of the Fat Controller's Funfair. Children would be coming from far and wide. There was to be a special visit from the Chinese dragon. Percy was delighted. He thought the Chinese dragon was the most exciting thing of all. The Fat Controller arrived at Tidmouth. He had come to give the engines their jobs. Edward was to pull the merry-go-round, Henry the roller coaster, Gordon the fairground folk, Toby the bumper cars. James and Emily were to pull the Ferris wheel, and Thomas, boomed the Fat Controller, you are to collect the fireworks on the Chinese dragon. What's my job, sir? Asked Percy hopefully. You are to collect coal from the coaling plant. You must fill all the hoppers at the stations, ordered the Fat Controller. A railway can't run without coal, he added. This is a very important job. The Fat Controller left and all the engines were excited. All except Percy. Coal, he sighed. And as he watched his friends leave for their exciting jobs, Percy felt very left out. Percy chuffed sadly over to the coal plant. This didn't feel like an important job at all. When Percy arrived, he could see a long line of trucks. I wish I was pulling something exciting, grumbled Percy. Not boring old coal trucks. Percy buffered up and pulled out of the depot. Percy stopped at a signal by a school. Toby puffed past pulling flatbeds full of bumper cars. The children in the playground clapped and cheered. Then Edward chuffed by with the merry-go-round. The children cheered even louder. Percy thought that Toby and Edward were having a wonderful time. Then an idea flew into his funnel. Maybe Toby and Edward need some help. Helping friends is much more important than delivering coal, he wished. So Percy didn't deliver the coal. He left his trucks and he steamed after his friends as quickly as he could. Toby and Edward stopped at a red signal. Percy puffed up alongside. Do you need any help? He tooted hopefully. No, thank you, Percy, said Toby. We can do it, chuffed Edward. Percy was disappointed. Further up the line, Percy saw Emily and James. They were taking the Ferris wheel. That looks like fun, tooted Percy. I'm sure they'll need some help. Percy caught up with James and Emily. This is going to be the biggest wheel ever, chirruped Emily. Emily and James were having a splendid time. But James and Emily didn't need help either. Percy was upset. Then Percy saw Gordon waiting at a junction. Gordon was pulling the fairground folk, but he didn't need any help either. Percy saw Henry crossing the bridge. Henry was happily pulling the roller coaster. Finally, Percy saw Thomas waiting at a signal. He was carrying the fireworks and the Chinese dragon. "That looks like the most fun of all," gasped Percy. But even Thomas didn't need any help. Percy was more disappointed than ever. Then there was trouble. Percy had spent so much time trying to help that he hadn't delivered any coal. Percy saw James. He looked very sad. "There's no coal at the stations," he wished. "We've all run out of coal." "Bust my boiler," cried Percy. "If the engines don't get some coal, the Funfair won't open. All the children will be sad, and it's all my fault." Percy knew what he had to do. He had to pick up his trucks and deliver the coal as quickly as he could. Percy wished all over the island delivering coal to his friends. Soon, everyone's boiler was bubbling and their pistons were pounding. The engines were back on track. The Funfair was ready just in time. Percy finished his last delivery of coal and arrived at the Funfair as the fireworks began. The rockets soared, the band played, and the Chinese dragon danced. All the children were delighted. "The Fat Controller was right," tooted Percy. "Delivering the coal is a very important job." Toby's afternoon off. The engines of Sodor are very friendly, and none is more friendly than Toby. Toby is a happy, smiling steam tramp with lots of friends. There's Mavis at the quarry, Salty at the docks, and Thomas. They're all Toby's friends. One day, Toby had finished all his jobs early. He was going to spend the afternoon at the farm. Toby loved visiting the animals. As he was about to leave, the Fat Controller arrived. "Toby," he said, "I have 3 important specials. As you have finished early, you will have time to do all of them." "Yes, sir," puffed Toby. But Toby was worried. He liked being useful, but 3 jobs would take him the rest of the day. Now he would have no time to go to the farm. Toby puffed off. He felt sad. But then he had an idea. Perhaps he could get everything done in time. "All I need is some help with just one of my jobs. I'll ask one of my friends." Toby's first job was to shunt some trucks at the yards. As he arrived, he saw Mavis. "Mavis will help me," he thought. "Sorry, Toby, no time to talk," Mavis puffed, and she steamed past him. Toby was upset. He had been sure Mavis would help him. "I'll just have to shunt the trucks on my own," he puffed sadly. Next, Toby had to collect some empty trucks from the depot. As he arrived, Thomas was leaving. "Thomas," called Toby, "wait! Will you help me take some trucks?" asked Toby. "Sorry, Toby," chuffed Thomas. "I'm in a hurry. I'll help you later." And Thomas raced away. Toby was surprised. Mavis and Thomas had both rushed off very quickly. Now he would have to take the trucks to the coaling plant himself. It was getting late. Toby was worried he wouldn't get to the farm, and he wouldn't get to see the animals. Once Toby had delivered the trucks, he rushed to his last job at Brendam Docks. "Perhaps my friend Salty will help me." But as Toby arrived, Salty was rushing towards him. "Salty," cried Toby, "stop, please. I have to help Cranky unload lots of cargo," puffed Toby. "But I'm running out of time. Will you help me?"
Sorry, Toby," said Salty, "but I have an important delivery. This piston rod is too important to wait, matey."
Toby felt miserable. He knew deliveries were important, but he thought helping a friend was important too. Neither Mavis, Thomas, nor Salty had helped Toby. "And I thought they were my friends," puffed Toby sadly. He would have to move all that cargo on his own. Now he'd never get to the farm. Toby pulled up alongside Cranky.
"What are you waiting for?"
Cranked Cranky. "I'm here to pick up the cargo," said Toby sadly.
"The ship's been caught in rough seas,"
Cranky snapped.
"The cargo won't be here till morning."
Toby was delighted. Now he'd have time to get to the farm, so he raced off. Then Toby saw Henry in a siding.
"Where are you going in such a hurry?"
wheezed Henry sadly. Toby told him all about wanting to go to the farm, and all about Mavis, Thomas and Salty. "I thought friends helped each other," Toby wheezed, "but they were all too busy to help me." "That's because they've all been helping me," puffed Henry. Toby was surprised. "I broke down," said Henry, "so Mavis brought my special coal. Thomas took my passengers, and Salty brought me a new piston rod." Toby knew he had made a mistake. Mavis, Thomas and Salty had been helping a friend after all. "They were all helping you," gasped Toby. Toby felt very silly. "Is there anything I can do to help you, Henry?" he asked. Henry was surprised. "But then you won't get to the farm to see the animals," said Henry. "It doesn't matter," said Toby. "Helping a friend is much more important. What can I do?" Henry asked Toby to take his carriages to Knapford Station. Henry's carriages were very, very heavy. "I don't know if I will be able to move them," said Toby, "but I'm going to try." Toby coupled up to the carriages. He heaved and hauled and puffed and pulled. At last, Henry's carriages began to move. Henry was very pleased. "Thank you, Toby," he called as Toby puffed away. "Sorry about your afternoon off." But Toby didn't mind. He was helping his friend, and that was better than an afternoon off any day. Thomas's Tricky Tree. It was the winter holiday season. All the engines on the Thing Controller's railway were very busy. Skarloey was pulling trucks of holly and mistletoe from the woods. Mighty Mac was taking holidaymakers to the mountains. And Sir Handel was taking a special present to the wharf for the Fat Controller. It was the winter holiday tree. Thomas was very excited. The Fat Controller had chosen him to collect the tree from the wharf. He was to take it to the town square in time for the winter party. When Thomas arrived at the wharf, it was very busy. He looked for the tree, but he couldn't see it anywhere. Duncan puffed up. "Are you looking for something, Thomas?" he chuffed cheekily. "I'm looking for a Christmas tree," tooted Thomas. "Don't you know what a Christmas tree looks like?" laughed Duncan. He liked teasing the big engines. "It's tall and green and pointy." Thomas didn't think this was funny at all. Duncan called out to Peter Sam. "Peter Sam, Thomas needs our help. He doesn't know what a Christmas tree looks like." "Of course I do," puffed Thomas. He didn't like being teased by the small, cheeky engines. It made him cross. Later, Thomas met Sir Handel. "Thomas," Sir Handel began, "the Christmas tree is—" "Tall and green and pointy," chuffed Thomas. "Thank you, Sir Handel. I don't need your help." Sir Handel was puzzled, but Thomas had already wheeshed away. Thomas chuffed into a warehouse. Rusty was there. "Hello, Thomas," he honked happily. "Can I help?" "No, thank you, Rusty," Thomas tooted quickly. He looked around. He couldn't see the tree anywhere. Thomas was beginning to worry. Thomas chuffed into another warehouse. "Hello, Thomas," whistled Skarloey. "Can I help?" Thomas didn't want to be teased by another little engine. "No, thank you, Skarloey," he puffed. Then he saw it. A long, pointy load on a flatbed. It was covered in a tarpaulin. "I've found it," tooted Thomas excitedly. "The Fat Controller will be waiting for this tree." "What tree?" Skarloey whistled, but Thomas had wheeshed away. Thomas raced out of the warehouse, but he was puffing too fast. Then there was trouble. Thomas took the wrong track. He applied his brakes hard. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. He heard the flatbed crash into the buffers, then splash into the canal. "Oh no, the Fat Controller's tree!" cried Thomas. "It's not a tree, Thomas," whistled Skarloey. "That's what I was trying to tell you. It's a load of pipes." Thomas's cheeks turned red. "Sir Handel delivered the tree this morning," Skarloey added. "So only he knows where it is," puffed Duncan. Thomas was a big engine, but he couldn't have felt smaller, and he couldn't have felt sillier. The quayside cranes lifted the pipes out of the water. Thomas was worried. It was getting later and later. Thomas knew there was only one engine that could help him, and that was Sir Handel. He chuffed quickly away. Thomas had to find him and ask where the tree was before it was too late. Thomas's boiler bubbled and his axles ached as he raced towards the transfer yards. He thought Sir Handel would be there. And Thomas was right. Sir Handel was there. "I've been a very silly engine," Thomas wished. "I didn't want to listen to you. I thought I knew better than the little engines, but I don't." Sir Handel listened carefully. "I need to find the tree," Thomas puffed, "and there's no time to lose." "Of course I'll help you," chuffed Sir Handel. "Follow me, Thomas." Thomas's smile stretched from buffer to buffer. Sir Handel was fast, but Thomas puffed quickly after him. The Fat Controller would be waiting. Thomas was coupled up to the tree. "Thank you, Sir Handel," chuffed Thomas. "Now I must hurry." "I'm sorry I teased you," whistled Duncan. Thomas smiled. "I'm sorry I didn't ask for your help," wished Thomas. And he raced away. That night, the Fat Controller switched on the tree lights. They looked wonderful. The children clapped and cheered. "I may be big, but I can still ask for help," tooted Thomas, and his smile was as bright as the lights. It's good to be Gordon. Gordon is a beautiful blue engine with a great big boiler and a separate tender for his coal. Gordon's favourite job is to pull the express. One beautiful spring morning, the Fat Controller came to see Gordon. "Today, if you pull the express across the island and back again on time, then you will set a new Sodor record." Gordon was excited. He wanted to set a new record more than anything. "Hooray for Gordon!" whistled Thomas, and all the engines tooted. Gordon steamed over to the coal depot. He rolled under a coal chute and his tender was quickly filled. Gordon started puffing away when the yard manager called. "Stop, Gordon! You've been given Henry special coal by mistake." Gordon knew that Henry needed special coal, but he thought Henry's coal would help him go faster. So he pretended not to hear. Henry had to take tar wagons to Knapford. He rolled his tender under the chute and waited for his coal. "I'm sorry, Henry," said the yard manager. "There is no special coal left. You will have to use ordinary coal today." Henry was worried. Ordinary coal clogged his firebox and stopped him making steam, but he knew he had work to do. "It's only for one day," he said bravely. "I will try my very best." Gordon arrived at Knapford Station. His passengers boarded, and he happily set off right on time. Soon Gordon was chuffing as fast as he could. He didn't know if it was Henry's coal or the crisp bright air, but today it felt good to be Gordon. It didn't feel good to be Henry. Henry's tar wagons were very heavy, and his engine didn't like the ordinary coal. Gordon steamed across the island.
The record is mine! The record is mine!
Henry was having a terrible time. He was rocking and rolling, coughing and wheezing. "The workmen are waiting! The workmen are waiting!" he gasped. Thomas thought Henry looked very ill indeed. Gordon was making good time and feeling grand. "Have you seen Henry?" asked Thomas worriedly. "He looks very poorly."
I'm sure Henry is fine,
Gordon hooted. "But his face was as green as his tender," Thomas puffed. Now Gordon began to wish he hadn't taken Henry's coal, but he still wanted to set a new record. So when the signal changed, Gordon puffed on. But no matter how fast Gordon went, he couldn't get away from the bad feeling in his boiler. Gordon wasn't enjoying being Gordon anymore. Gordon had to stop to let off passengers. Henry was taking on water. Henry's face was green. His axles were shaking and dark smoke billowed from his funnel. "Are you feeling all right?" asked Gordon. "I didn't get my special coal this morning," coughed Henry. "My firebox feels funny." But then it was time for Gordon to leave. "Hooray for Gordon!" wheezed Henry. "You'll set a new record for sure." Gordon could see Knapford Station up ahead. The Fat Controller was there. Gordon was on time and going to set a new record. But Gordon's bad feeling was now so strong, he thought his boiler would burst. Gordon slowed to a halt. "You're going to be late," cried his driver. "I don't care," whistled Gordon, and he started to reverse. Gordon soon reached Henry. Henry had stopped for a rest. He was surprised to see Gordon. "I took your special coal this morning," puffed Gordon. "I wanted to go faster than ever. I'm very sorry. But now I have a good idea." Gordon and Henry swapped tenders. Soon, Henry's firebox was full of special coal. Henry felt better right away. "Thank you, Gordon," he huffed happily, and together they puffed off to Knapford Station. But Gordon and the express were late. Only Thomas was there. The Fat Controller had gone home for his tea. "I'm sorry you didn't set a new record today," chuffed Henry. "And I'm sorry I took your coal," puffed Gordon. "Who holds the old record?" whistled Thomas. "I do," said Gordon, and the good friends laughed. Emily and the Special Coaches. It was summer on the island of Sodor. All the engines were excited. Gordon had set a new record for pulling the express. Emily was on her way to pick up two very special coaches. They had been newly painted to celebrate Gordon's record. The Fat Controller was going to present them to Gordon. Emily had stopped to take on water. Diesel pulled up alongside her. "You look very pleased with yourself," oiled Diesel. Emily told him all about Gordon's record and collecting the special coaches. "Gordon's not the only one who's special," Diesel oiled proudly. "Well, there's nothing special about smelly old diesels," pouted Emily. I haven't time to listen to you. I have to collect more coal. And Emily steamed off. This made Diesel very cross, and he rattled away. Later, Emily arrived at the yards. But Gordon's special coaches weren't there. Diesel has already collected them, puffed Thomas. He said it was his job. But that was my job, huffed Emily. I'll have to find them. I mustn't be late for the presentation. Emily puffed quickly across the island. She was looking for Diesel and the special coaches. Suddenly, Emily saw Diesel waiting at a signal. He was coupled up to Gordon's special coaches. Why have you taken Gordon's coaches? She snapped sharply. Because, Diesel began. I haven't got time to listen to you, huffed Emily. Give me those coaches. Not if you won't listen, groaned Diesel, and he sped away. Emily chased after Diesel. It was getting later and later, and Emily was worried. But as usual, Diesel was being devious. He knew all the tricks and many different tracks. Emily couldn't catch him anywhere, and he made her look silly. Emily steamed into Maithwaite Station. The Fat Controller was there. Where are Gordon's coaches? He asked her. Diesel took them, sir, huffed Emily. We must find him at once, boomed the Fat Controller. And he climbed aboard Emily. Diesel had hidden the coaches in a siding, but he wasn't feeling well. He started to slow down. Up ahead, Diesel saw Emily with the Fat Controller. Now I'm in trouble, he moaned. Diesel, said the Fat Controller sternly, where are Gordon's special coaches? They're in a siding, sir, said Diesel quietly. Take Emily there at once, ordered the Fat Controller crossly. Yes, sir, oiled Diesel. Diesel showed Emily the trucks in the siding. Emily could see black smoke coming from Diesel's engine. What's wrong with your engine? Asked Emily. My engine's old, spluttered Diesel. All that rushing round has worn it out. Then you shouldn't have taken the coaches, huffed Emily. You should have listened to me, snapped Diesel. Why should I listen to a smelly old Diesel? Because Gordon's not the only one who's set a record, oiled Diesel quietly. I've set one too. Emily was surprised. Have you? She wished. And this time she listened. I've shunted more trucks in one day than any other Diesel. Diesel oiled, and he spluttered sadly away. Oh dear, said Emily sadly. Diesel is just as special as Gordon. Emily raced to Knapford with Gordon's special coaches. Now she wanted Diesel to feel special too. As she puffed into Knapford Station, Emily had an idea. She told the Fat Controller all about Diesel's record and about her idea to make Diesel feel special. The Fat Controller listened carefully. That's a very good idea, Emily, he said. Tell Diesel to come here this afternoon. Emily found Diesel. She told him he had to go to Knapford. Then Emily raced off to collect Diesel's surprise. Later at Knapford Station, the Fat Controller presented Gordon with his special coachers. "Don't my coachers look splendid?" puffed Gordon proudly. Everyone agreed. Just then, Emily puffed into the station. "And this new diesel motor is for you, Diesel," chuffed Emily. Diesel was surprised. "I'm sorry I didn't listen," said Emily. "Now I know that Diesels and Steamies are both special." Everyone cheered for Gordon and Diesel. Thomas and the Colours. All the engines on Sodor enjoy pulling carriages. Taking passengers makes them feel proud and useful. The Fat Controller had an important announcement to make. "Today is the day of the big football match," he boomed. "The Sodor school team will play a team from the mainland." All the engines were very excited. "Whoever finishes their jobs first will pull the Sodor team." Last year, James had pulled the Sodor team. His carriages had been decorated with ribbons and flags. Everyone had cheered. This year, Thomas wanted to pull the Sodor team carriages. He was going to try hard to finish his jobs first. Soon Thomas's work was done. He was sure he'd finish first, and he steamed proudly to the yards. But when he puffed into the yards, there was James. James had finished all his jobs first. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "Look, Thomas!" huffed James proudly. "Don't these flags look wonderful on me?" Thomas was upset. "But you pulled the team carriages last year," he huffed. "And I'm pulling them again this year," snorted James, "because I finished all my jobs and I got to the yard first." Thomas was very unhappy. "It's not fair," he wished. He wanted to find a way to make James change his mind. James was on his way to collect the Sodor team, but he had to stop at a signal. Thomas puffed up next to him. "I've got an idea," tooted Thomas. "Why don't you take the Fat Controller to the match? He will have the trophy. That's the best job. Then I can take the Sodor team carriages for you." But James didn't want to take the Fat Controller or the trophy. He thought wearing the team colours was much more exciting. Thomas tried to think of another way to make James change his mind. James puffed along by the canal. Thomas raced up alongside. "Wait, James," he cried. "Look at your reflection. Green flags spoil your bright red paint," puffed Thomas. But James didn't think so. He thought he looked splendid, and he puffed off smiling. Thomas's idea to take the team hadn't worked. He had to think of another one. James was still puffing proudly to collect the Sodor team. Thomas was puffing along too. He was thinking hard. Suddenly, an idea flew into his funnel. Thomas pulled up to the signal box. He was pleased that James hadn't yet arrived. "Quick, sir, you must change the points." So the signalman pulled a big lever. Then Thomas watched James fly into the siding. The siding hadn't been used for a long time. It was very overgrown. Thomas heard scratching and scraping sounds. When Thomas saw what had happened, he could not believe his eyes. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. All the green and white flags had been ripped from James's funnel and cab. "The soda team colours are ruined!" cried James. Thomas felt terrible. "I'll go for help," he said, and he steamed quickly away. Thomas felt very silly. He wanted to take the team and he had spoiled everything. Just then he saw Bertie. Bertie was taking the children to the football match. They were all carrying flags and wearing scarves. But Bertie had broken down. Smoke was coming from his radiator and his engine made a wheezing sound. "Please, Thomas," said Bertie, "can you take the children to the football match for me?" "I'm sorry, Bertie," puffed Thomas, "but I have to help James." Thomas felt bad. He had already got James into trouble and now he couldn't help Bertie. Suddenly, Thomas had an idea. "I can take your passengers, Bertie, and I can help James too." So Thomas quickly collected Annie and Clarabel and he took the children to the siding. They had a wonderful time. They decorated James with their scarves and flags. He looked splendid. When James arrived at the football ground, everybody cheered. They all thought he looked wonderful. "I look even better than last year," puffed James proudly. Thomas was very pleased. "Maybe I could pull the school team next year," Thomas asked hopefully. James thought that was a grand idea. "But only if you get to the yard first," he teased. Thomas and the birthday mail. It was the stormy season on the island of Sodor. All the engines were battling against the bad weather. Thomas was busy delivering supplies and mail in a far part of the island. He really enjoyed going up to High Farm. It was up on a hill. Right at the end of the line, a little girl called Alice lived there. Alice and Thomas were good friends. One day, Thomas was on his way to High Farm when Rosie stopped beside him. Rosie was a cheerful, chirpy little tank engine. She was always pleased to meet Thomas. She liked him so much that she wanted to be just like him. So she tried to copy him. She tried to whoosh the way he did. She even tried to whistle like Thomas. It made Thomas cross. "Hello, Thomas," puffed Rosie brightly. "What are you doing?" "It's Alice's birthday," chuffed Thomas. "I want to get all her presents up to High Farm in good time." Just then, Harold the helicopter arrived. "Another storm warning, I'm afraid," he shouted. "High winds on the way and heavy rain." Harold warned Thomas not to go up to High Farm. "Heavy rain can cause landslides on that hilly route," he said. And Harold flew away. Thomas didn't want to let Alice down. "High winds don't bother me," he puffed. "Or me," chuffed Rosie. "I'll come as your back engine." But Thomas didn't want Rosie to come. "No, thank you, Rosie," he huffed firmly. "I'll manage on my own." And he chuffed quickly away. But Rosie liked Thomas very much, and she wanted to help, so she chuffed cheekily after him. Thomas puffed along the line to High Farm. The sky grew darker and darker. Soon it was pouring with rain. Thomas's pistons pumped and his boiler bubbled. It was hard work. "Rosie can't follow me now," he thought. "She isn't strong enough." Thomas was wrong. Rosie's pistons were pumping and a boiler was bubbling right behind him. She whistled cheerfully to Thomas. Thomas was very annoyed. Soon Thomas came to a junction. One way was the longer, easy way to High Farm. The other way was shorter and much harder. Thomas knew that the longer way was safer. "But I'll take the shorter way," he wished. "Then Rosie won't follow me. She's not strong enough." As the storm raged, Thomas puffed furiously up the steep track. Thomas was almost at High Farm. He was sure Rosie wasn't behind him now. "I won't be seeing any more of her today," tooted Thomas happily. Then there was trouble. Earth and stones tumbled down the bank and blocked Thomas's track. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. But he still wanted to deliver Alice's presents. "I'll just have to bash my way through," thought Thomas. And he pushed forward into the landslide. Thomas was up to his buffers in mud and stones. He tried to push on, but he couldn't. He tried to back out, but he couldn't. Thomas was stuck. Thomas felt silly and very sad. "I should have listened to Harold," he wished unhappily. "Now Alice won't get her presents on time. I've let her down," he thought sadly. Then he heard the toot of another engine. It was Rosie, puffing proudly up the hill behind him. "It's me," tooted Rosie cheerfully. Then she saw Thomas was stuck. Thomas felt very silly. "I'll go and get help," chuffed Rosie. "Wait a minute," whistled Thomas. "Please, will you deliver Alice's presents for me?" Rosie was very happy. "Of course I will," she puffed. Rosie was soon coupled up to Thomas's trucks. Then she steamed off to High Farm. Thomas waited for Rosie to come back. He was happy she had followed him after all. Soon Rosie came puffing back down the line. "Alice's mother has telephoned for help," Rosie told Thomas. "Edward is on his way to pull you out." Then Thomas noticed that Rosie had a passenger on board. It was Alice. She had come to thank Thomas for getting her birthday presents to her. "I couldn't have done it without Rosie's help," Thomas puffed. "Now we can all celebrate your birthday together." Thomas tooted happily. And so did Rosie.
They're two, they're four, they're six, they're eight, shunting trucks and hauling freight. He's the cheeky one.
James.
His fame but lots of fun.
Percy.
Pulls the mail on time.
Gordon.
Thunder